Dan and the Invisible Band. Like the great songwriting duos of yesteryear, Louis and Dan bring comedy and smarts to music for today's families. Best friends, neighbors, and college professors, Louis teaches musicology at St. Olaf. Dan teaches philosophy at Carleton College. They bring humor and seriousness along with musical sophistication to their work as songwriter musicians. This is evidenced by the tunes on their new album called The Greats. Let's find out about their musical journey together, their new album, and hear a couple of their fantastic new songs. And get the answer to, what in the world is an invisible band? It's time to talk with Louis Epstein and Daniel Groll. Hello, Dan and Louis, and welcome to Musician Talk.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. I love your music. I love your music. So we're going to start with just very brief kind of personal journeys musically for each of you to give the audience an idea of where you kind of came from musically. And then we'll talk about how you guys got together to become the group that you are today.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. This is Dan. I started playing drums when I was about 10 years old, and that was my main instrument until toward the end of grad school. So I played drums in bands. I went to school. I went to a conservatory for drums, and then picked up the guitar in my late 20s and played in various sort of indie rock bands until 2018, which is when Louis and I got together.
And I am Louis, and I took piano lessons from the age of 5. I started clarinet when I was 10, classical lessons exclusively. I also majored in music in college, but not in performance. I studied music history and played in various bands like Dan, mostly on instruments that I wasn't trained in. So I played in a brass band that did covers of popular songs. I don't know if I can say the name of it on the radio, but I'm just going to say it. It was Hornography.
Oh.
That was my grad school band, and then like Dan,
Really great name. Actually.
Played in a sort of alternative rock band when I got to Northfield until Dan and I started playing together.
Yep, and that was in 2018. Louis had been rewriting words for patriotic songs as part of political organizing.
Got it.
And they were very, very clever lyrics, very funny and pointed, and I had I think both of us had a bunch of sort of half-written songs that we would sing to our kids. And I thought, well, we should get together and try to do something more systematic. So I emailed Louis and was like, let's get together and do something more systematic. And he was like, let's do that. Great. And like a week later, we had a spreadsheet with potential song ideas,
Wow.
and that's how it got going.
Wow, so you already had songs that you were working on before you got together. Then did you start working on those songs that you already had written separately and collaborate on those? Or did you start working together on writing tunes from scratch right away?
Both, to some extent. And this is still our songwriting process. We brought things in that we had been working on individually, but then we went through a revisions process together, kind of made them better. But then also because the band was forming, we realized, now we can write completely new things, and we can either do it together or we can think about what would make sense for us as a group.
Did you say this was in 2018 that you started?
That's right. Yep.
Doing this? So then you had all the time of the pandemic just to work on stuff.
It's true, although we did a fair amount before the pandemic struck. So we did two records, I think, before the pandemic even happened. Right. And so we were well on our way when the pandemic hit.
You guys are pretty prolific then.
It turns out we have a lot of ideas for songs of this kind. I don't know why that is, but they come fairly naturally.
Pretty fully formed.
Sometimes.
Yeah, things have changed a little bit. I feel like when we started, it was more someone brought a complete song. And then the other person we'd tweak lyrics, some ideas here. But we're writing more and more together, I think, as the time passes. Mm-hmm. Or someone will bring a concept or 60% of a song and then hand it over to the other person.
Nice.
So it's gone from... I feel like on the early records, I could point and be like, that I know exactly who's that is, like who came up with that idea or that line or that song. Whereas on this new one, I cannot remember.
Yeah.
because it was the most collaborative.
Yeah, it's gotten more organic.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun, writing together and pushing each other, thinking of jokes on the spot, and seeing what sticks.
And so you guys write just children's music? I mean, it's for adults as well, but that's your focus? And so all of your albums that's your focus?
Since 2018, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, and so you both have children. Mm-hmm. And so do you get a lot of inspiration from, I gotta believe, from their antics?
Yes. No, we definitely get inspiration from their antics. There's a song on our first record about my daughter. It's called Desperado Cleo. I think she was in her terrible twos or threes at the time. And I thought, she's definitely a kind of gunslinger. And we got to write a spaghetti western style song about her antics around the house. And so she rides around the house on her Roomba instead of a horse. She makes huge messes. She refuses to wear the clothes you set out for her. She lays waste to the kitchen, that kind of thing.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It's been a long, long time for me since that was the case with my kids, but I remember that. That is delightful that you could write a song about it. That's absolutely wonderful. So, what instruments do you guys play?
In the band,
or just in
general.
Mm-hmm.
So I do most of the singing in the band, though not all of it, and play guitar. And then on the recordings, I do basically all the drums and a little bit of auxiliary percussion. And that's the extent of my playing ability. I can dabble on the piano, but Lewis can do much more.
Yeah, so I cover the keys, so piano, organ, synthesizer on all of our records. I play most of the wind instruments because I'm trained in clarinet, and I can also play saxophone. And so, on the new record on Put It on the Barbecue, which I think we're going to hear in a little bit, I think in that one I'm playing tenor sax, baritone sax, to give it a kind of fat horn sound. Keys, woodwinds. I play some auxiliary percussion. I do some singing, backup vocals, and harmonies.
Well, it's great that you could do that because then you don't have to do it on the synth. So if you do want some horns or woodwinds, quite often if you don't have a player, you just play it on a synthesizer. Right. But there's a difference that you can tell totally, and it's so great to have the actual instrument doing it. I love that with drums too. So much better than the programmed drums. The live kit is always just so much more. You feel it more, I guess.
Yes,
I think.
I agree.
It's got soul to it.
Yep, totally.
The electronic stuff just doesn't. So this is a great segue. What we were talking about into your first album, and it's called The Greats. And we're going to play 2 songs from that during our show today. But I want to talk a little bit about the album. I listening to these 2 songs. I want to get the full album and listen to it or stream it. I guess that's what you do now, because it's so wonderful. And I love even just these 2 songs are just completely different genres, and you kind of have maybe a little bit more freedom on that writing for kids albums.
Totally, yes. That I think we both did not anticipate that, but have been very happy with it. So in our independent, our own indie rock bands, you don't switch genre styles radically. That would just sound very strange.
Right.
It's much more uniform in terms of style, but we feel like we can just write whatever we want in this band in terms of styles, and so we cover as much as we can, basically.
Musical theater, hip hop, folk music,
spaghetti western.
Spaghetti western, exactly.
Right, and one is kind of a bluesy rock tune, and then the first one I thought of with I Love to Sing. I thought of musical theater.
Yeah,
I did that. It crossed my mind, particularly because the show I'm in right now. I'm just going to plug it right now.
Please.
Peter and the Starcatcher. It's at the Guild. If you want to laugh, go. It's today at 2:00, next Friday, and Saturday at 7:30, and Sunday at 2:00. If you want to laugh, go. It's a wonderful show. But we start our warm-ups because there is singing in the show, and we do our vocal warm-ups, and one of the vocal warm-ups we have is I love to sing. So I was expecting that, and you guys do a little different melody with that. So that's probably also why I thought of musical theater. So we talked a little bit about your writing collaboration. How do you decide which songs, because it sounds like you guys are so prolific, which songs to actually put on the album?
That's a great question. We, whenever we're thinking about making a new album, we usually independently will draw up lists of songs that we think should be on it from our repertory of things that are written and in pretty good shape, or that we think we could finish pretty quickly. And we compare our lists. There's some haggling.
Yep.
But usually there's a lot of agreement. I think
Yeah.
we have a pretty good sense of what our strongest material is or what has the most potential to resonate with people. And then there's always usually a little bit of additional songwriting to kind of fill out the record, either to fill gaps that we see in style or to try to bring it together thematically. Like the new record, The Greats, has opening and closing numbers that are different versions of the same song.
Cool.
We've never done that before, but we
Right.
really wanted to tie it together by kind of introducing, okay, this is what we're doing on the record, and then closing it off by saying, this is what we've done, and we hope you've enjoyed it.
Kind of like a college paper.
Yeah, I suppose
Tell
that's
them
right.
what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is our most thematic record by a long shot. So it's got, the idea is that all the songs on it are inspired by songwriting, musicians that we like, that we listen to, that have inspired us, and so that helped shape what was on the record. So there were some songs that are like, well, that's a great song. I really like that song, but it's not tied into this.
Right.
So
Right.
it'll wait till next time. Or,
Well, that kind of helps.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it does help.
Having some kind of boundaries or
Exactly.
yeah. So on this album and perhaps your other albums, but particularly this one that we're going to talk about today, that we're talking about today, do you play all the instruments on them?
Almost.
Okay.
Right. So I Love to Sing is actually a major exception. We brought in some professional jazz musicians because we really wanted it to sound like we had like an amazing jazz combo. And like Dan did play drums on that. But I did not play keys and I didn't play any horns on that because we wanted a really professional sound. Okay. So we had J.C. Sanford, who has been teaching at St. Olaf the last couple of years on trombone, Stephanie Wiesler on tenor sax, Elaine Burt on trumpet, and then J.C. Sanford played bass on that and a couple of other songs.
Wow.
Jeff Bailey played bass.
Oh, sorry.
Jeff
You said
Bailey.
J.C. Sanford.
Jeff Bailey, sorry.
Bailey. Yeah, so
heavy hitter.
Lewis is right that song is the exception. On everything else, neither of us play bass.
Got it.
So anytime you hear a bass, it's not us.
Got it. Okay.
But everything else is a pretty good bet. It's one of us, but with occasionally guests doing some horns, sometimes some lead guitar bits.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then for this song, you brought in Tefsa, and I'm sorry.
Tesfa Wandamagniu, yep.
Thank you. And he's at St. Olaf, a choir conductor, director. And so how did you get him involved and why?
Oh my gosh. Tessa is a good friend as well as being a colleague, obviously an amazing musician. And his voice is just, it's like one of a kind.
Yes.
And we just wanted it on the record to offer a different voice, but also because like Tessa is legitimately like a nationally, internationally recognized choral conductor. He warms people up for a living. And so when we were making this joke on the song about, we haven't warmed up, we've got to get everybody warmed up, he was just the first person we thought of to help us out. And then Put It on the Barbecue was actually written specifically for him because he is a barbecue maven. Like he will stay up all night smoking meat. He has invited like hundreds of people to his home and to other events where he has provided the barbecue. And so he's an expert, and we wanted to feature and reveal his expertise in barbecue.
Definitely want to have him on the show.
Yeah, he's great. He's a force of nature. He's a really wonderful guy. That's
great. So this first song that we're going to listen to is I Love to Sing. And can you give us a little bit of the backstory? I mean, it's about warming up, and that's part of it. You talked about that, and there's a break in the song that you talk about that. But where did this song come from? Where did it start?
So my colleague Karen Wilkerson at St. Olaf actually commissioned this song from us.
Oh, great.
She did it in memory of her mother, and it was for a voice studio that she was teaching. She wanted to offer a sort of gift to the students, something whimsical but still like related to their course of study. And so she emailed me and she said, a song about singing somehow. And I said, what do you want us to touch on? And she said, maybe some of these things. And it was kind of like some kind of party game where you throw a bunch of ideas into a hat. And it's like charades or something. You just have to pick one out and go with it. So we just wrote this really densely packed song with so many references to vocal technique and, singing history and famous singers. And she loved it. The kids loved it. We've actually done it with the St. Olaf Orchestra.
Yep.
And now it's on the new record in a jazz combo arrangement.
Yeah. And I actually think it's like very illustrative of something we've learned, which is that if you just aim to write something compelling, like a strong melody, strong ideas, it was not written for kids. No. It was written for a college class, but children love it. My kids want to listen to it. They love the warm up bits. They just love it. And so, as we've progressed, I think we've stopped thinking about for kids, not for kids, and just like this seems like a good idea for a song, period, and let's do it.
And I think I mentioned this before we started here, it's so appreciated, I think, by all parents out there to have music for their children, because, gosh, you have to listen to it so many times if the kids like it, to have music that also is sophisticated enough for the adults to really appreciate it, too.
Absolutely.
So let's listen to I Love to Sing, an original by my guests, Louis Epstein and Daniel Groll. While we're getting those technical issues sorted, I was wondering where you recorded this album.
This one was recorded almost entirely at a studio in the Minneapolis called The Library.
Okay.
It's run by Matt Patrick, who is a producer and also plays with all kinds of people around the cities. And he's got a great space. He's really great to work with. Previous records have been a mix of stuff there and play like rooms at Carleton. Using some of the equipment we have access to there. But this one was, I think, exclusively done at the library. Yeah.
And so when you brought in those other jazz musicians, let's say for this song, I Love to Sing, did you have parts written out for them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, it was all orchestrated.
Written out charts.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had actually, JC is such a great guy, and we had sat down with him a week or two in advance and showed him the draft of the chart that we had come up with, and he gave us sort of feedback,
right,
making sure that it was going to be ultimately legible for these musicians. But yeah, part of the joy of Louis and Dan and the Invisible Band is that not only do we get to write in lots of different genres, but we get to push ourselves in totally new directions. I've never arranged a jazz tune before.
Right.
But we sat down together, we
figure out lines,
brainstormed lines, just like playing in Dan's house. And then I went back and transcribed them and added some things, adjusted some things. It was a great learning experience to figure out how to make sure that professional musicians are going to come in and not say, this is amateur hour,
right.
but to come in and play it and like add something to it. It's so fun to see that come to life.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. I mean, so often when you have these original songs, you go into the studio. You have the chords.
Yeah,
you have the melody and chords, perhaps, and some basic tracks, and then you make up your own part. And
yes, we don't work that way. We both, as a function of our personalities, I think the idea of leaving it open and just figuring it out on the spot is not something we would cope with very well, but part of it is just the financial reality. Studio time is expensive, and so basically almost everything, 98% is worked out beforehand, and there are rough recordings of every song with all of the parts that we've been listening to for weeks ahead of time, making adjustments. So then when we're in the studio, it's like we like spreadsheets. We have our spreadsheet with the parts. We've decided what's going to, we're going to do these songs today. We're going to do these parts, and it's just, let's do it. And then invariably, there's, always a little bit of like, maybe we need something else. Right. What should that be? But we try to keep that to a minimum.
Listening to the way you guys work, it seems like you should write a musical. Have you guys talked about that?
We have.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Yeah,
we're talking about it right now in the sense that we have an idea, we have a premise. We've also talked about how complicated musicals are to produce. I mean, I think the writing would be very fun, but then you want to see it on stage, right? And that is a whole additional process that we don't have as much experience in. Or I have experience playing in pit orchestras and like helping write a musical, but I know enough to know all of that work that has to go into making it happen.
Right.
Look, in a perfect world, we would absolutely write a musical. It may be the kind of project that we need to wait until we're both on sabbatical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yep. You want concentrated time, I think, as opposed to getting together once a week or how often.
No, that's exactly right.
Like you just need to have your heads together, down and working. Yeah. So let's go ahead and. No, it's not. Do you know, they sent it to me in an email with the link. I wonder if that would just work. Should I forward you that email? Yeah. Okay,
there's also, you can stream it from a website if you want.
Okay. Okay. Well, when he does that...
you talk, and I will come around here.
We're going to figure this out.
Pauline, could I talk a little bit about the sort of charitable destination of proceeds from the album?
Exactly. That's exactly what Yes.
Perfect. So as we mentioned, our good friend Tesfo Wandamagniu is singing on the album, and in honor of his participation, we're donating the proceeds from this new album, from all album sales, to two charities. One is Known Minneapolis, which is a Twin Cities community-based choir, and the other is the Poor People's Campaign. which is run by the Reverend William Barber. And the reason why we're donating the proceeds of this album to begin with is that Tesfa last summer went on a 60-day pilgrimage, really. He traveled all around the country to various black communities in the country, talking to people who live there, asking them what their lives are like, what they need. And he did that as preparation for writing a brand new piece, a choral piece, that's actually been premiered by the University of Michigan Glee Club. And his whole intention behind doing this was not to make money for himself or bring attention to himself, but to create authentic connections between classical music organizations and their local communities, and to make sure that the needs and the opportunities of the local communities are being met. And so his project is called To Repair. You can read about it. Star Tribune reported on it. And we were so inspired by this and thought, we've been lucky enough to make a little bit of money from this venture. We need to follow Tesfa's lead and give back. So in honor of him performing on the record, we actually asked him, what are some charities we should consider donating to? He suggested these two, and so all proceeds from album sales are going to Known Minneapolis and the Poor People's Campaign.
That's just really awesome. I love that story. I love it. And the first one was Known Minneapolis, KNOWN
Yep.
Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. Are we ready? All right. So let me do this again. Let's listen to I Love to Sing, an original by my guests, Louis Epstein and Daniel Groll.
There are times when I feel blue.
No doubt you have them too.
When nothing ever seems to go your way. But here's a little trick
To make a good mood stick,
I try to do it each and every day. I love to sing a melody.
I love to sing
a harmony. No matter where, with whom, be it with bells or kazoos, I sing with glee.
I love to sing low and high.
I love to sing Queen of the Night.
And when I'm in a tough jam, I draw on my diaphragm,
then I can breathe just right. And when I sing in a choir, our voices multiply, or maybe fuse into one. Yes, when we deeply respire, our voices soar and higher, oh soprano, alto. We're in your face in the nicest of ways.
I love to sing like a loon.
Try not to sing out of tune. Well, if I'm in a tricky spot, I'm gonna sing Sinatra. I can't help but croon. Fly me to the moon, let me play among those stars.
Stop.
Oh, hey Tesfa, what's wrong? Were we violating copyright?
No, y'all covered by fair use. The problem is that you didn't warm up.
Oh my goodness, you're right. Tesfa, since you're a choral director, can you warm us up?
Sure, repeat after me. Wee oh wee oh wee oh wee oh wee.
Wee oh wee oh wee oh wee oh wee.
And again.
Wee oh wee oh wee oh wee oh wee.
Great. Now let's work on our plosives and fricatives.
Tesfa, this is a family album.
Just repeat after me. The mouth, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. The mouth, the teeth, the tip of the tongue.
The mouth, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. The mouth, the teeth, the tip of the tongue.
Okay, now try this. I love to sing.
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 I love to sing. It's divine. I love to sing like the greats of all time.
Aretha and McCartney, Presley, Prince and Pavarotti. Yeah, our tastes are pretty fine.
I'll sing half Deutsch en français, Italiano all day. When belting out Beyonce, I'll still apply IPA.
I'm nailing all my vowels when I'm shouting in the shower.
If I'm sounding kinda chesty, it's because I'm on travesty.
Whether feeling
Happy,
embarrassed,
joyful,
sad,
I always love
to sing.
This is Pauline Jennings, and you're listening to Musician Talk. You just heard I Love to Sing, an original written and performed by my guests, Louis Epstein and Daniel Groll, who make up the band Louis and Dan and the Invisible Band. And they're my guests today. Oh, I love that song.
Thank you.
Gosh, it's crafted so well. It's mixed so well. It's played so well. It's sung so beautifully. Your range has got to be like 3 octaves.
Well, I mean, that's, the Queen of the Night is super head voicey stuff. I don't spend a lot of time up there.
No, but your pitch is right on, even though you don't spend a lot of time up there. Wonderful job. Absolutely. The words I wrote down when I first listened to this was catchy, clever. I love the message. It's funny. It's appealing to adults and kids. It's just beautifully written. I love it.
Thank you
done.
so much.
Thank you.
Well done, you guys. Wow. I'd love to hear this done with, did you say it was with the orchestra?
We did it with the St. Olaf Orchestra, I think 2 years ago. 2 years ago? Last fall.
Yeah.
It's been, 2 years, at least 2 years. But you can there's a video of it on our YouTube account. You can watch the whole thing.
Awesome.
It's particularly poignant because at the very end, I was actually taking voice lessons when we first started recording. And my voice teacher is in the audience, and at the end, the camera just points out to the audience. And when we sing that final wee oo wee oo wee, she puts her hands on her head because she realizes like this is the vocal warm up that she had done with me. It's so lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, I love moments like that. That is so precious. Okay, so we'll play another song here in a little bit, but I want to talk about the quote of the week, and I thought I would look up a quote that had something to do with children.
Yeah.
And then it comes to find out, because this is by the Greek philosopher Aristotle. That's your philosophy professor.
That's
You're
me.
a philosophy, Dan is. And so here's the quote, very short. Music has a power of forming the character and should therefore be introduced into the education of the very young. So, what do you think about that? What first comes to your head when you
Can
hear
I first
that
say,
quote?
this is a very dangerous thing to do. You've just asked 2 professors, one in philosophy, one in music history, what they think of this quote by Aristotle.
Yeah, it's true.
The interview's over. We're going to go on for the next hour and a half.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts. I totally agree with this idea that music should be part of the education of the very young, in part because music is one of those things that makes us human. Right. And if we don't treat children like humans, like what are we doing exactly? So of course they should be musical. They're already musical. We can't help but notice that they're musical. I also have critical things to say about Aristotle, because when he was talking about character, he was talking about like a very specific kind of character.
Oh, really?
He was thinking about the ways that sort of society is formed through the character of individuals who behave in certain ways. And he was really concerned also with some of the dangers of music education that might not be working towards that end. So I agree with the sentiment. I think his particular application of it was really limiting. And what we're trying to do is make sure that kids feel drawn to music in a really natural way.
Yes.
We're not trying to force any kind of music, any kind of character. We just want them engaged.
Well, I'm so curious what kind of character. I'm thinking male, certainly. It's
Correct.
about patriarchy and that.
He was worried about low musics and sort of low occupations and the ways that people used music for entertainment might not always be character building.
Oh,
right?
it's not sophisticated enough,
right? It might lead you down the path to sin. So there's some of that in there too. Dan maybe has more to say.
No, I mean that's all true. I mean Aristotle and Plato both had very particular ideas about what an education should look like.
Sure.
And Lewis is right, all about forming a particular kind of character. I mean, so one thing that's interesting is that at least with like Plato, there's extensive discussion of music in the Republic. He thinks it's at the core of the education that the rulers of the ideal city need. And there's lots of talk about which modes are the right modes, like modes like
Dorian is good because it helps people behave in a war-like behavior.
Except my understanding is that no one actually knows.
Nobody knows
what the mode, like the modes as we understand them. Like Dorian is like D to D, right?
They're not
Lydian
the same
is
as
like
the,
F to F.
Right,
it's
there's
like
different scales.
Right.
No one knows what they sounded like. So there's many pages of discussion, and it's like who knows what it sounded like. But yeah, they had very particular ideas about the benefits and harms of music, which I think neither of us subscribe to. No. I mostly think of music and the role of music in my life as very separate from the philosophy. I kind of think it's own thing. When I
Sure.
do music, I don't want to think about philosophy. When I do philosophy, I don't want to think about music.
Well, divorcing it from Aristotle, just the sentiment of music adding to character or building character, or and how that affects your personality, I guess. Is there a link? Do you think there is?
I guess I wouldn't use the word character. I would
Got it.
just describe music as a form of expression that allows us to be ourselves.
Wonderful.
And you could describe that in terms of character formation. Of course, I want my kids to feel like themselves and to be themselves.
Right.
But I think character carries some weight of, like, I tell my kids all the time, this is building character when it's something they don't want to do, right? And so I don't want music to be something that builds character in that sense. I want it to be something that they're just naturally drawn to and that they use to express themselves.
I think that when you're involved with music, maybe not as much the music itself as the involvement in music is character building, in that it teaches you teamwork, it teaches you to take your turn, it teaches you to trust each other, it teaches you to be vulnerable,
Absolutely.
teaches you dedication, teaches you commitment, a lot of those things that we want to have in every aspect of our life, perhaps.
It's true. It's true. I mean, although those things can... I mean, it's a striking fact, right, about humans, that they can be exceptional in one domain and terrible in other domains.
Right.
Speak for
and
yourself,
so,
Dan.
Right. Who are you talking about?
ennobling stories about, like, music or sports. People love talking about team sports. Like, there's... you can be like some of the greatest athletes in the world are just awful people because they spend all their time being athletes. I feel like the same is true with any activity, including music. People can be exquisitely sensitive musicians, and then display absolutely none of that sensitivity in their interpersonal lives. And so,
or even on stage,
yeah,
to
their bandmates. It's just so I think that's striking. As much as I would like to think that, like, this sort of it inculcates virtue, broadly speaking, I'm not so sure it's true. Which is why I kind of think it's like it's its own wonderful thing. It's its own, and people talk about it as its own language. I think there's something to that. It's its own way of just engaging with the world. That I think you're right. I think it can do all those things, but it might not do any of those things.
Sure.
Also, I'll add that this idea of education is a really broad and vague idea, and Dan and I have talked at length about the extent to which we want our music to be educational or not.
Yeah.
And in fact, we sometimes debate, should we have this line, which teaches a pretty clear lesson in this song, or should we have this line, which is more whimsical or isn't trying to teach anything, it's just a great word or a great rhyme? And I would say we tend towards the latter.
Yeah.
We find that when we are trying to teach too directly, it really weighs our music down. It's not as fun, it's not as engaging. We don't feel as authentic when we're doing that.
Sure.
And so we're not really trying to educate.
Yeah.
At least not explicitly. Education is just part of everything we do, right? We learn from our daily experience. So if kids are listening to our songs, if they're trying to sing along and encountering lots of words they've never heard before and asking their parents about it, education is happening.
Yep.
But we're not trying to force it on anyone.
Absolutely. Well, I love your sentiment that you said that music more allows us to be who we are.
Yeah.
And isn't that precious? There's not a lot in life that allows us to do that we don't feel there's some kind of prescription to the way we should behave. So that's wonderful. It's time to move on to the next song, and it is called Put It on the Barbecue. And so why don't you tell us a little bit of background on that song and where the inception of the song came from?
Yeah, sure. I think Lewis mentioned this was written specifically for Tesfa, who is the featured vocalist on this. And so, he's truly a barbecue expert. So I wrote a song for Tesfa, which I think is maybe the first time that we've written a song specifically for like another person to sing. Yeah.
And then, as in all of our songs, it has a twist, right? So Tesfa is singing about his mastery of barbecue, and then we come in and kind of ruin things.
Yes.
Because we're not experts,
Yeah.
And then, I think there's a thread going through a bunch of our songs where we love singing about food.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because we eat every day. I'm not sure. But we we love singing about food, and this was a great opportunity to link to one of our earlier songs, which is called Yupster Food Song, where we sing about just the most esoteric or healthy snacks that we could think of. Many things that kids would not naturally like want. And so this song is sort of an echo of that, and that we're suggesting, well, you'll hear we're suggesting things to put on the barbecue that one should not put on the barbecue.
That's right.
That's great. So did Tesfa know that you were writing this song?
Yeah, we ran it by him first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Lest we write a whole song. And
Right.
You'd be like, no,
I can't sing this.
Jeez.
So when you first played it for him, was he just tickled pink? I gotta believe.
Yeah, he laughed out loud at several of the lines, and then Tesla, he added his own spin to it.
Yeah.
You know, we wrote in some dialogue, but then he said, "Well, can I say this instead? This feels more natural to me." And we said, "Of course you can."
Right.
I think we even changed one of the lines in the first chorus because he just said, like, I think I had like, can you put beans on the barbecue as a legitimate thing? He was like, you would not put beans on the like, what are you talking about? We gotta come up with something else.
Right.
So he, just like in our own collaborative process, he genuinely improved the song by giving us some feedback, putting himself into it. And you'll hear, I mean, Tesfa is fully himself in this song. It's wonderful.
It is so wonderful. And that's a great setup. You ready there, Wendy, with this one? Do you have it? Okay. So it's time to listen to Put It on the Barbecue from my guest's new album called The Greats.
When I'm not working, I love to cook. My favorite dishes aren't in a book. There's just one culinary tool that I use. I keep it outside. It's my sweet barbecue. 1, 2, 3, 4. Weather is warm, friends coming by. I made my marinade and coleslaw on the side. Head to the yard, lay out my homemade charcoals and tongs. Got my carving board ready for some action. I got to watch out for that Maillard reaction. Last thing that we gotta sing, my barbecue song. Burgers, ribs, and wagyu. Put it on the barbecue. Chicken, lamb, and fish too. Put it on the barbecue. And it's understood, use hickory wood. Put it on the barbecue. 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 There's nothing like the smell that wafts through the air. Whenever I light the grill, I'm ready to share. Bring me any kind of food, I swear I'll make it taste great. So Louis and Dan, what you want on that plate?
You mean, what would we put on the barbecue?
Yeah, y'all tell me.
Got a block of tofu.
Tofu?
On the barbecue. Underwear, spaghetti, and ragu.
Huh?
Put it
No,
on
y'all
the
playing with me.
barbecue. Reduce, reuse, renew. With hickory smoked bamboo.
Bamboo.
Put it on the barbecue.
Put it on the barbecue. Put it on the barbecue. Put it on the barbecue.
All right, how about this? Of all the top flavors, utensils, and skills, from China to Carolina, Kansas City to Brazil, tell me your favorite, it's the ultimate test.
Test for everybody knows Memphis barbecue's the best.
Yes, M10 represent. What else y'all got?
Can you eat an emu?
Put it on the barbecue.
Yes.
Need to heat a fondue. Put it on the barbecue. Cook it up with fescue.
Test for to the rescue.
Put it on the barbecue.
Put it on the barbecue.
Put it on the barbecue.
Put it on the barbecue. Put it on the
This is Musician Talk, and I'm your host, Pauline Jennings. My guests today are Louis Epstein and Daniel Groll, who make up the duo Louis and Dan and the Invisible Band. You just heard their original Put It on the Barbecue. well, I think Tesfa could probably sing anything.
Yeah.
I agree.
His voice is like butter, and then he introduces the growl, and then you get a little bit more edgy. It's really, wow.
Yeah.
And wonderful horn playing, and I love that rock, kind of bluesy rock vibe. It's just, it's so catchy.
Great.
And I gotta believe that kids, well, I laughed, but kids just, let's get tickled pink with that underwear, spaghetti, and red.
Oh, yeah.
Just,
That's another inside reference. We one of the songs on our first album is called Underwear Spaghetti. It's about Dan's favorite food, and that's our song that has the most hits on Spotify.
It's true. It's true.
Kids, I think,
they
do
really
it.
like that one.
right, just put underwear in the title.
Right.
It doesn't matter
exactly.
anything about it. That is just so great, and again, that's just it's so professionally produced. The back. How did you decide what kind of backups to do? Your backup vocals.
Mm-hmm. For this song in particular?
It's so choice. I mean, it's so tasty where you put the backups, and it's also unexpected. Some of it too.
Uh-huh.
It's not completely just how every other song is done. I don't know. I guess I don't know if you can explain how you make those decisions.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we've gotten better at arranging as time goes by. So we spend a fair amount of time thinking about where something is needed and where it's not, which I guess is not very illuminating. That's just what arranging is, but like not trying to have too many things going on at the same time.
Right, and I
filling in the
noticed
space when there's a gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just that you give space to where the music is and where it's not. It's also on the spectrum of where things are in hertz wise. You know, you don't have a bunch of things in the same area in the same, and so you can hear everything.
Exactly.
And they sit down right into the music, and you just go, okay, yeah, that really. You hear everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, really well
Yep.
done.
That's right.
So we're going to move on to best gig, worst gig. We're running out of time here. Do you guys think of? Do you have any?
We were just talking about our worst gig. We won't name the place, but we did have a show where we were trying to play a song that we had just learned and is very demanding. It's our song about Minneapolis. That's the one you had in mind, right?
That is absolutely
yeah. And we got through like at 30% the first time and had to stop, and then I think we made it to about 60%, and it just fell apart both times.
It was just too early to bring it out.
It was too early.
Sure.
It's a hard song. I was thinking, in fact, like, I mean, anyone who plays, you know, you have songs that some you're very good at, some you're not as good at. But in the songs you're not as good at, it's like there's particular parts where you're like, okay, this is the hard bit.
It's coming up.
Right.
But this song, it's like the whole thing. Like there's no point where it's like, okay, I made it past here.
Right.
I'm good. It's like I made it past here.
Right.
Now there's this next thing coming up.
Go ahead.
Which we do to ourselves in the sense that we do like writing songs that are musically sophisticated where the choruses aren't exactly the
They're not
same
exactly
every
the
time.
same.
But that means that you have to remember which chorus you're playing at what time.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what did you do when you did? Did you just say, "Well, folks, you know,
Sorry,
we
next
got
time."
to."
We said it's not going to
Yeah.
happen this time, but we're going to keep working on
We're gonna
it.
keep working
Sometimes that really endears you to an audience.
Yeah.
Actually, they feel like, oh, you're real people.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So that's good. How about one of your best gigs?
Well, we've had the great privilege of playing Fest du Nord Labor Day weekend the last couple of years. That takes place at YMCA Camp du Nord up near Ely.
Oh, yeah.
And it's put together by John Munson, who's the former bassist from Semisonic and now is in the New Standards. And we played alongside Cuckoo Kangaroo and the Okie Dokie Brothers and Humbird and just other, like Jeremy Messersmith, just like big names from the kids' music scene in general and
cool.
Minnesota music specifically. The crowd is always super engaged. We ask people to do something, they are up on their feet doing it. And it's every time we played, it's felt like one of our best shows ever.
Yep, it's true. You know, I think what I might choose as my very favorite, though, is the last show that we did at, not next door to Imminent.
At Armory Square.
At Armory Square.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was our first show in a long time. And at this point, at least many of the local kids who come to our shows know our stuff. And so I feel like it was the first time where it was like real recognition and people singing along, which was like super gratifying.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. I bet, particularly to have children singing along.
Yeah, it's great.
My heart is warm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So before we leave here, I'd like to let everybody know where they can get your music and where you're going to be playing here next.
Yeah. It's all on our website, which is lewisdaninvisibleband.com. We actually wrote a...
We don't want to do a whole song and dance about it, but we do have a song about it, which we'll sing.
Do it. Just the bit. Okay, 3, 4.
LewisDanInvisibleBand.com. LewisDanInvisibleBand.com. LewisDanInvisibleBand.com.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Thank
I
you.
love it. We had a third part there a little bit.
Yeah, it's all there. This album, The Greats, will be available on streaming services only come this Friday.
Okay. Awesome.
So if people
It's
go
fresh.
looking for it, they won't find it until Friday, but then it will be there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And your other albums are there. And then what's your next gig here in the area?
We've got we're playing the Bridge Square Block Party right here in Northfield on Thursday. We'll play from 5:30 to 6:30, and then we're playing at Keepsake Cidery on Saturday. That's at 4 p.m.
And I don't know if it counts as the area, but we're playing the Lake Harriet Bandshell this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's where we'll leave it. Except, oh my goodness, I promised everybody we'd talk about your name, the Invisible Band.
Oh, sure.
So I think that's brilliant. There is no band. It's just the two of you. So I guess that's the explanation.
Yeah, I think that's right. It was one of the very first songs I think we wrote, and it happened while we were coming up with the name. And I think in this instance, the two came together. It was like, let's have a song about the band. We'll have all kinds of different instruments in the background.
Right.
I don't even think at that point we'd conceived of like what exactly our go-to common instruments would be.
Right.
But that idea, I think, gave birth to the idea of like, I think in our songs we should have like all these different
Lots of
instruments going on.
Playing live,
Right.
by us for the most part.
Wow.
And each record, with the exception of the third one, the first two records and the next one all have intro songs where the band gets reintroduced each time.
Got
And new
it.
instruments get new instruments get introduced and the like.
Well, it's very clever, and it is hard to come up with a good band name. So
Yes.
there you go. All right. Well, thank you so much to both of you
Thank
for
you.
being on
Thank
Musician
you.
Talk. This was a lot of fun.
Likewise.
A lot of
Thanks
fun.
so much.
All
Thanks,
right.
Pauline.
Take care. Many thanks to Louis and Dan for joining me to share their journey with us and to give us some insight into their wonderful music. Thanks also to Wendy Nordquist for her studio expertise, and mostly thanks to you, the listeners of Musician Talk on the One, KYMN. Have a joyous day.
The time is 11:20. You're tuned to KYMN North.